Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 36. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, a jam-packed show. We got Mike Tomlin. We got quarterback discussion, All-22 review, the quote from Tomlin's own words, laundry list of injuries. And the Steelers are certainly dealing with plenty. George Pickens, Davante Adams, and plenty more. So, ton to talk about here today, Dave. Let's get ready to dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be, and we're going to have probably a pretty good segment about, just warn everybody up front. Probably going to have a pretty good segment about George Pickens and kind of all the stuff swirling around him, and have some data to back it up, and have tape evaluation to back it up, and then have just overall opinions to discuss there. So, if you don't want to talk about George Pickens or listen to people talk about George Pickens today, you might want to skip that part of the show. Or if you want to hear kind of some, educated, at least analyzed thoughts on the matter, then maybe you'll enjoy it. But just want to warn people ahead of time, because you have the fan base section. It says that you're not supposed to get on any player whatsoever, especially if he's a favorite player. But we don't adhere to all those rules all the time, so we're bound to step on some toes in this one.
Yeah, there's I'm gonna nerd out here for a quick second, but whenever I'm not watching football and doing Steelers Depot stuff, I'm a weather geek in terms of like they've got the hurricane. We hope everyone stays safe from Hurricane Milton, which is a terrible storm rolling through the Tampa area later today. So I like that. I like tornadoes. And one of my favorite meteorologists is James Spann, who works down in ABC 33 down in Alabama. Anytime he's on air, whenever there's a big outbreak, and he's just doing nonstop continuous coverage, and they have to like break for their call sign at top of the hour, and he'll say something like, it's ABC 33, 5 o'clock, and the news is weather. And I have that in my head because I think about the news is George Pickens, which has been the top story of the day, of the days, and probably coming days for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But we'll take a pause on Pickens before we dive into all of that. Let's talk injuries here about the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they have plenty of those, and that certainly should be a headline of this week as well. Mike Tomlin holding his Tuesday press conference, and already on a Tuesday ruling out essentially 7 players. 4 officially, he's calling out 3 more doubtful, but if you're doubtful on a Tuesday, the odds of you playing on a Sunday are very remote. So the 4 that Tomlin officially did rule out or characterized as out were DeMarvin Leal, Nick Herbig. Leal has the neck injury, Nick Herbig a hamstring injury, Cordero Patterson with his ankle he suffered 2 weeks ago, and Alex Highsmith will miss another week with a groin injury. Tomlin said that Jaylen Warren, his knee, Michael Pruitt, his knee, and Damontae Kazee, who rolled an ankle pregame, pushed through it, but did not come out well on the other side, or are doubtful for Sunday's game against the Las Vegas Raiders.
Let me take my shoes off here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got enough toes to match that.
Running out.
I'm running out. Last I looked, that's a full inactive list. If you elevate 2 players from a practice squad on Saturday, 7, that's full at that point. What I would look for to potentially happen is one of these newly injured players. Put that on a bumper sticker or advertisement. One of your newly injured players is probably going to go to IR. Maybe at least one of them. We'll obviously have to see how this plays out. Nick Herbig didn't look great being helped into that tit, but hamstring injuries are tricky. Damontae Kazee, Mike Tomlin said that thing blew up, so you know how maybe those high ankle things can be. Maybe that's going to be an extended amount of time there, and then maybe the one with Leal with that neck, maybe that's the most serious of them all. Now, you would think, I use that term loosely, that the guys that have already missed some time, would have already been on IR at this point, had their injuries been deemed serious enough. But regardless, I'm willing to bet at least one of these newly injured players, either Herbig, Leal, or KZ, winds up on IR come either later today or obviously by the end of the week on Saturday. Obviously, I think we should expect at least one elevation on Saturday, possibly even two. Mike Tomlin named a couple of those practice squad outside linebackers that could get opportunities this week. But I think the fact of the matter is I would expect a 7-man inactive list this week in totality, and it will be interesting to watch to see how the 53-man roster is manipulated the rest of the week moving forward. Because look, what are the odds you're going to dress all 9? You might have to, because you just have a full inactive list, but you're probably not going to dress all 9 offensive linemen. You're still probably going to have a third quarterback, whoever that is. That's another segment of the show coming up here. So there's going to be some moving and shaking, I think, here with this 53-man roster between now and Saturday afternoon.
Oh, yeah, going to be busy for sure. And yeah, I think Herbig and Leal are the most likely. They could both go on IR. I would not bat an eye. I've had multiple players on IR with hamstring injuries, Corey Trice Jr., Tyler Medikevich, and with Herbig already ruled out, we're looking probably multi-week and potentially month-long for him. And I watched back the Leal injury, and I don't know details other than they called it a stinger initially, and now Tomlin calls it a neck. But that was a scary-looking play, the way that his head hit, I think, off of Zeke, and just the impact was unsettling there. So I think he's generally okay. I mean, he's obviously moving and no issues in terms of that, but it would not be surprised if there was an IR stint there. So you're talking about 3 of your top 4 edge guys who are not going to play this week, potentially 2 of them going on IR. The good news is you have TJ Watt. The bad news is you're really missing everything else.
Yeah, and that plays into another little subsection of the Mike Tomlin press conference, talking he was asked about Loudermilk potentially seeing some time on the edge, and I think that's within realm, kind of using him sort of in the way that Leal has been used. I think you're going to see a plethora of guys get some work opposite TJ Watt. You obviously had Jeremiah Moon come back from IR last week and see some playing time in that game against Dallas. And then you're going to at least probably get one of these guys from the practice squad come up on Saturday and maybe see some pass rushes over on that side. And then you have an option in Loudermilk over there on that side as well too. So I tell you what, I'm going to, if I'm the Raiders, I'm giving not that you weren't going to get all of it anyway, but I'm giving all my love and attention and flowers and chips and to TJ Watt on his side this week.
Right. The game plan won't change for the Raiders. They'll give the same attention they would have otherwise, but now you lack that threat that's going to be one-on-one on the other side that can take advantage. Right? I've compared Watt to that elite receiver that commands double teams, which creates one-on-ones for everyone else. Well, you're lacking that kind of Juju to AB kind of, dynamic where, okay, you put, the other guy one-on-one and he can certainly win his matchups the way that Herbig was just dominating that game and dominating Tyler Guyton before, and both ended up getting hurt, Guyton first and then followed by Herbig. So the practice squad names, and yeah, we'll see who gets elevated. I imagine at least 1, maybe 2. You probably need at least 4 options in this game for rotation to not put too much on any one guy's plate. You have Ade Ogundeji, the former Atlanta Falcon. He was signed to Pittsburgh's practice squad right around the start of the season, right after cutdowns when Pittsburgh initially formed the practice squad. He did not play last year due to injury. He has, I think, almost 30 career starts, though, a couple of sacks. So he actually has over 1,000 defensive snaps with Atlanta in 2021 and 2022. So there is experience there. And then there's Iku Leota, who's former Carolina Panther. He actually played earlier this year, played in 2 games for the Panthers, picked up a sack in week number 1. And so there is less experience than Ogundeji, but there is some current and more recent NFL experience. So there is something to be said about that. But obviously, we're talking big downgrades here once you lose Highsmith and Herbig and even DeMarvin Leal.
And boy, we mentioned this the other day. Herbig was on a heater in that game. And it goes without saying you lost Highsmith already, but you were still getting pass rush production and looked to be pretty decent run support out of Herbig on that other side. Now you've lost both those guys on the other side, and hopefully, I don't know how far away Highsmith is to coming back. Maybe I kind of wonder if it won't be until after the bye, but obviously we'll see. He's obviously already ruled out for this week, so it's not going to happen now, and probably going to be some sort of conditioning period as he works his way back from that. But we'll see overall. But the fact of the matter is, you're going to have a lot of guys rotating on that other side, probably from Watt against the Raiders.
Sure, and then at running back, no Patterson, we'll assume no Warren, so it really should remain as it was against Dallas. Najee Harris getting the bulk of the work, Aaron Shamklin getting some more third down reps, and Jonathan Ward sprinkled in on some occasional carries as well. So running back situation is still far from ideal.
And Ward's still on the practice squad. So how are you going to get him? How are you going to get all the, you can only have 2 elevations every week, right? And if you're going to elevate both of those outside linebackers, there is going to be some roster moves coming up. And maybe by the time we get off of this show.
Yeah, probably 8 seconds after we get off the show in typical terrible podcast fashion. But yeah, some guys are going to IR. There's no way they're having the same 53 now as they do once they take flight to the Raiders in Las Vegas on Sunday.
Right.
All right, Mike Tomlin's press conference. And before we get into Pickens, which will be a longer conversation, an equally maybe long conversation, is the quarterback situation where for the first time this regular season, Russell Wilson will practice in full on Wednesday for Mike Tomlin. He's been limited since aggravating that calf injury about 3 days before week 1 in early September. He had gotten some ramp up in work last week, was still officially listed as limited, but was getting some 11 on 11 work. Now Tomlin says he will be full. He will work on Wednesday, at least with the 2s, with the backups, while Justin Fields continues to work with the 1s. So my sense is from what Tomlin had to say was that, Fields is still preparing as if he's the starter. They're still checking some final boxes with Russell Wilson, but we are in a new stage right now where you can probably really start saying that the team is even acknowledging that Wilson is fully healthy. If he's going to be full here all week, no guarantee of that, but that's the way this thing is trending, which means it is going to have to be at some point here official decision time with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Boy, Mike Tomlin's crafty, though, isn't he? with kind of the wordsmithing circulating and still using the word hypothetical within some of his press conferences and making sure to point out that Russell Wilson's got to get through Wednesday first, and then we'll see Thursday, and then the totality. And at one point during a press conference, he was asked, is there even, what are the chances that, or is there a chance that Russell Wilson is at least active and the backup to Justin Fields on Sunday against the Raiders? And he said, well, that's ajar. The door's definitely ajar there. Did you get any sense whatsoever that there is even the remote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% chance that Russell Wilson actually starts this game against the Raiders, barring something happening to Justin Fields in practice or something, this week?
Initially, when Tomlin danced around the idea, I think he was asked or just didn't mention that, Fields, he didn't initially say that Fields was going to prepare as the starter as he did in weeks past. I thought, okay, maybe this is different, but I think he kind of said that later when he was asked about it or made some reference to it. Yeah, my overall takeaway is that they're proceeding as if Fields is going to be the starter. And if you're starting and you're getting the 1s work on a Wednesday, which is the first install day, that's the day where the team comes back after their Tuesday day off. You get the game plan, you start putting things in. Yeah, I don't think they would have gone with Wilson if he was going to be with the twos today. So short answer is I'm still expecting and believing that Fields will start this weekend.
I am as well. And I think the most curious thing is when we get to Friday, if Russell Wilson has been listed as a full participant in all 3 days, and will Mike Tomlin list him as questionable or not come to Friday injury report? If he's not listed as questionable, regardless, let's say he practices full all 3 days and then still listed as questionable. Well, if he's listed as questionable, I think you can't rule out the opportunity of him being the inactive number 3 once again. However, if he goes full all 3 days and ends up on Friday as just no game status report, then I think I'll be very surprised if he's not at least dressed to be the number 2. And at that point, then what's left of Pandora's box is fully open at that point, especially for the following week when it comes to the conversation. Now, look, he is smartly once again been able to dance around all this now for going on. This is week number 6, and all along, not that where you should ever read way too much into a depth chart that's printed in a game release and released on the website, but Russell Wilson has remained QB1 throughout this. He has been able to leave all of his options on the table still, even this long.
Yeah, I mean, he's been able to string this thing out longer than I think I even thought he'd be able to, but I'm pretty confident. I know that Tomlin said there's still those boxes to check, working on back-to-back days, going through a full practice, seeing how your body feels after that. And listen, Wilson was healthy and moving fine before, and then it's a Thursday practice, steps wrong, whatever happens, and aggravates the calf injury again. So you never know. You're one step away from being back at square one. But assuming no setback, we're at a point where Wilson is healthy and he's going to practice in full all week, and they can no longer play the he's just not quite there card. This is fully healthy Wilson, fully healthy Fields. Time to make a decision.
Yeah, and we will have a better sense of that, obviously once the inactive list and how things transpire against the Raiders. I was asked this by Dave Weekly on his show yesterday. It's another one of those kind of hypotheticals or whatnot, but let's assume, which is dangerous to do, and I told Dave Weekly that as well too. But let's assume Russell Wilson is the active backup quarterback to Justin Fields on Sunday against the Raiders. How bad? What would it take for Mike Tomlin to yank Justin Fields from this game and put Russell Wilson, and I'm assuming Justin Fields starts. What would it take for a quarterback change in game to happen against the Raiders? And I'll give my answer first because it's already out there. I think it would have to look pretty bad on Justin Fields' part, something like 3 interceptions, 3 sacks, down on the scoreboard, more than a score, second half type situation where you need a spark at that point, and Justin's just not getting it done. You want to see at that point. So it's obviously an interpretation of how bad is bad in each of our eyes. Your idea of that might be a little bit different than mine. Mike Tomlin's the one that matters, might be a little different. However that looks in his eyes, but I at its core, I feel like it would, if Justin Fields starts this game, more than likely he's going to finish it unless it just looks whatever degree of awful.
I agree. And that's true for most quarterback situations. It's the reason why most quarterbacks get yanked mid-game, because they turn the ball over, they don't produce, a team is losing. That's pretty standard, I think, framework overall. More specifically, just add on if there's communication problems, if there's lack of fluidity, if there's a bunch of 3 and outs as opposed to drives that are working and just stalling for a penalty or whatever reason, that may impact things as well. But yeah, I mean, just generally, why does a quarterback get benched mid-game? Turnovers, losing, playing sloppy, needing a spark. Those are all, all reasons why they turned to Kenny Pickett back in his rookie year, 4 weeks in at halftime. So similar situation, I'm sure, would have to take place in this week 6 game.
All right, we'll have a better sense come Friday because we'll have two practices to see if Russell Wilson's listed as full in both of those, and then we can speculate what will happen the Friday practice after we get off the Friday podcast.
All right, George Pickens time. Buckle up here, boys and girls.
This is going to take a while. Is there anything left over from Mike Tomlin that we need to cover as part of his presser?
Let me double check here. I think we've hit on a lot of the big things. I'll double check some of the articles that we wrote yesterday to try to see if there was any other storyline that particularly stuck out to me before we get into George Pickens.
I mean, he was happy with what Kyle Allen did when he came into the game, and why wouldn't he be? That was a nice throw that he made in that game. We covered the kind of the injuries and the Loudermilk stuff and the potential of guys getting the 2 outside linebackers getting elevated. A little bit on Minka, not really talk worthy, I don't think. I think we got most of it there, don't we?
I think so. So let's dive on into the elephant in the room. That is George Pickens, and a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss here. I may have some different opinions than some others, but bottom line is Mike Tomlin was asked again about Pickens not playing as much as usual, 34 snaps in this game, 59% of the offensive snaps. Those are both season lows. Tomlin reiterated the snap count, load management, whatever you want to call it, giving him some rest to maximize him when he was on the field. Tomlin was asked about, are you seeing any issues? Do you have any problems with Pickens' effort on tape? Tomlin said no. Was asked about the eye black that he wore that said, what always, effing open. Tomlin said he was not aware of the eye black that he had on. Tomlin did say he saw the final play of the game in which George Pickens yanked down quarterback of Dallas, Jordan Lewis, by the face mask, and said those things would be addressed internally. It would not be really talked about in that public forum. So that's kind of the bulk of it. Short story, addressing some of the behavior things still, but overall, Tomlin not showing alarm over Pickens' effort or snap count.
All right, let's start with the more fact. Let's start with data first. And let's start specifically with this snap count and the snap percentages, not only in this game, but through the first 5 games in totality. And you had a great post up on this. You took the time to go through our own personal charting by Tom Mead. Tell the people in a nutshell what the data at least shows on George Pickens' snap counts as related to personnel groupings and related to personnel groupings in bigger package in bigger personnel packages versus run pass.
Sure, I'll try to be as concise, but the post is up on Steelers Depot where I lay everything out that went up on Tuesday morning before the Tomlin press conference. In this Cowboys game, George Pickens played all 32 snaps of the team's 11 personnel. It's 3 receiver, generally more pass-heavy packages. In terms of the heavy packages, of which there were 26 that would feature, say, multiple tight ends, he only played 2 of the 26 snaps. I went back and looked going into the Cowboys game, so excluding the Week 5 data, to see how often Pickens played in 11 personnel and in heavy packages. And going into this game, over the first month, Pickens played 95% of the snaps in 11 personnel and about 56% of the snaps in heavy packages. And so my takeaway is overall, while there was an abnormal reduction of snaps in the heavy packages, it's not, to me, all that out of the ordinary. If you look at the ebb and flow from the Atlanta game, for example, Pickens played less than 40% of the heavy packages while playing in essentially all the 11 personnel. In that Week 1 opener, Van Jefferson played more snaps overall than George Pickens for that reason. So It was a little bit different, but to me, the data that I have and the charting that we do did not tell me that Pickens' playing time was reduced for punishment type of reasons. I do think this was game planned and was generally what Pittsburgh does: play Pickens and all the 11 personnel, rotate him out more often in the heavier packages. Again, there was more of that in this Cowboys game, but it was nothing to me that was all that alarming, and it kind of made sense with the previous data that we had.
All right. That's what the data says for sure. Second, one of my add-ons to this conversation is when and this is I dug deep for this analysis here. Okay, so I want you to sit down. All right.
Okay.
Ready yourself. This is high level analysis here. Okay. When George Pickens is not on the field for a play, George Pickens does not have an opportunity to make a play.
I'll have to take that to our researchers, but I believe you're right about that.
Okay. All right. I'm being funny and I'm not being funny there. First and foremost, he can't make a play when he's not on the field. Now, tapping into that, tell the people what Mike Tomlin said about the whole run blocking aspect and the big package.
Yeah, let me find the exact comment that he said, but essentially was asked about how do you view George Pickens blocking. He says, quote, he's a backside one-on-one matchup guy. So oftentimes he's not at the point of attack in the blocking game. Blocking responsibilities within our scheme are more handled by guys like Van Jefferson, to be quite honest with you, if you want a transparent answer, which is true overall in the tape, but I like that answer less. That one to me passed the smell test left. There are certainly times where Pickens is involved in the blocking scheme, or running back bounces a run that wasn't designed to go up the middle, and the receiver becomes a more important part of the blocking scheme. So I think under Arthur Smith and Zach Azzani, they would say the blocking responsibilities are shared by all players who are on the field.
How much better is a guy like Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin's blocking than George Pickens?
Well, if you're metrically inclined, PFF grades Pickens as an average run blocker, league-wide overall at wide receiver, but a better run blocker than Van Jefferson and a much better run blocker than Calvin Austin. I would say that I think Jefferson and Austin especially are more competitive blockers, but in terms of actual quality, I don't think anyone's done a great job. I think they've all been pretty mediocre. Jefferson in particular, I think, has been pretty disappointing as a run blocker. That was kind of what he was known for. They're all at best average.
And Calvin Austin gives you the high effort and, kind of guy. But I mean, size is going to get him in trouble regardless of effort sometimes. Will be interesting when you get at some point, you would think Roman Wilson involved in this thing, and he has shown high effort, but even he's not the biggest guy, right? And there's probably going to be some growing pains when it comes to that. At its core, at the core of this, with the whole heavy package, 11 personnel, how do you feel about the percentage of snap and knowing what Mike Tomlin said and yada yada and trying to explain it out? At its core, how do you feel about it?
I buy what Mike Tomlin is selling in that regard of the reduced snap counts. I know many people don't, and we'll have to agree to disagree. Now, I do want to be very clear about one thing. I'm not necessarily endorsing that. If you want to sit there and say Pickens should not be rotated out that much, he should basically be always on the field to be your top receiver, be your top
and that's
threat.
where I'm going with this is if you had your druthers, what would it be?
Yeah, I don't have an exact game plan. There's a lot of variables and things behind the scenes that are probably involved. I know in practice, these guys have trackers to track their speed, track their steps, and that's a big guide in terms of, okay, this guy's got a lot of reps and a lot of work this week. Let's kind of ramp him down. Let's be more mindful of his snap count. So there's a lot of factors at play that I don't have access to. But the point is, if you want to argue that he should be out there more and should play in those heavy packages, that's fair. I don't disagree with that comment. All I'm doing is taking Tomlin at his word for, have they been rotating Pickens out in those heavier packages in the past? They have, sometimes by large degrees, again, under 40% of those snaps in week one against Atlanta, only about half the snaps overall on the season going into this Dallas game. So it tracks with what they've been doing. You can disagree with it, and that's reasonable, but I do take Tomlin at his word when he talks about the reason why Pickens was playing less often.
All right, I'm going to be less. I'm not totally I'm not straddling the fence here. I think Pickens should be out there more in heavier personnel groupings because once again, when he's not on the field, he's easily your best skill position player out there for you. And on those plays that he's percentage of plays, especially in heavy personnel, when he's not on the field, I'm a little less worried about the passing game for the Steelers out of those heavier packages than I am with him on the field. And I think you're handcuffing yourself to some degree. I think he should be out there for a higher percentage of those plays. I think you can have even more of a happy medium within there and still play your quote unquote snap management aspect of what you're supposedly or what Mike Tomlin tries to paint is trying to get done by still ramping up his snaps a little bit more, higher percentage and heavier personnel.
Sure, that's fair. And again, I don't disagree. I mean, I think he should be out there more than 2 of 26 snaps and even more than the half that he's been playing overall. I do want to point out that in those heavy packages against Dallas, they had a perfect 50-50 run-pass split. So for whatever it's worth, it wasn't necessarily a tell where, okay, Pickens is off the field, so Pittsburgh is definitely running the ball. They actually had perfect balance, just to make that point clear as well.
I mean, you got a star wide receiver here, and look, this is going to play, like it or not, this is probably going to play a little bit some into into Pickens' attitude, right? I'm not out there. I can't make plays. I'm not going to get paid.
A little bit. I think there's another discussion to be had about the tape we'll get to in a second. But yeah, the less he's out there, the less opportunities he has, the more chances for frustration. Sure.
All right. In a nutshell, I don't like this.
But do you, to the core of the question, do you buy Tomlin's explanation?
Well, it tracks with the data. So, I mean, it tracks with what he at least is trying to paint as a picture as to why, and as opposed to being able to make the focal point one game against Dallas in the snap count.
Yeah, and one game is just one game, and it can produce a lot of noise. And again, there are those ebbs and flows. So I just focus on that to answer that question because there's a big difference between, okay, Pickens is not playing because of a punishment issue of some sort, which would be a huge story, or is it just generally what Pittsburgh has been doing? And I find it, in this case, to be more the latter.
And I do buy mix in. This is going to be a long segment. Mix in, a little bit what Ben Roethlisberger had to say. If you're going to punish a receiver, especially a star wide receiver, you just don't let him run out of the tunnel and get announced to start, and then you don't throw him out there maybe the first 2 plays of the opening series or whatever. There's better ways to quote unquote punish a receiver instead of cutting his snaps down severely.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you're hurting the rest of the team too. It's not fair to the rest of the team. So at its core, do I think this whole snap thing, whether you want to boil it down to just the Dallas game or the first 5 games of the season as some sort of punishment at its core? No, I do not believe that. I do buy to some degree the Mike Tomlin snap management thing mixed in with the blocking aspect and the heavier personnel groupings. It doesn't mean that I like it or agree with it, but that at least that portion of this passes the sniff test.
Agreed. And for anyone wondering what would have sent an alarm bell in my mind about suggesting punishment, to me, it would have been had there been a reduction in the 11 personnel. Let's say only played half the 11 personnel snaps, and then they had extra receivers up this game. They elevated Brandon Johnson, so they had some more options in terms of just able bodies to play. Had there been a punishment, but I can't see a punishment for Pickens where he plays 100% of the 11 personnel snaps, which tracks with what he's been doing throughout the season. So if I see a difference in that, that may tell me something different.
All right. Is there anything left of that particular, the snap count discussion.
No, I think I've made my case. And again, people can disagree, but that's the case. The other element, as you pointed out earlier, is the actual quality of snaps he did play, the 34 snaps he did take against Dallas, and the questions and thoughts about effort or lack thereof, which is a separate topic.
All right. Obviously, you had that video from Warren Sharp make the complete rounds on social media. I think you have to look at this in totality, which you have a nice 20-something minute video up on this as of this morning, both on the YouTube channel and on SteelersDepot.com, where you looked at several of the efforts that Pickens made in routes, not only in this game, but in a few certain situations. You went back and tried to compare it to other routes or similar type routes or play designs in previous games this year. Now, let the record show that guys like JT O'Sullivan and several others have already pointed out, especially preseason on into the start of the season, that Pickens could have been better with what looks like effort on route running, especially when the ball does not go in his general vicinity. I don't think this is new at its core when it comes to Pickens. I do agree that there are plays from at the very least Sunday's game where I think, look, in a perfect world, you would want the wide receiver to act like he's getting the football on every single play, right?
Sure, that would be ideal to have a Larry Fitzgerald or a Hines Ward that goes all out in all situations.
All right. Did he exhibit that in this game against the Cowboys? The answer is no. There were instances, even in my opinion, where the ball could have potentially, maybe, however the play works out, where the ball could have gone to him, that and really sometimes even on that one crosser over to the right that ended up being incomplete. With him coming across the field, I thought he could have definitely ran that one better, and have been interesting to see the outcome, because the DB's definitely going full speed and undercutting that by the time Justin Fields lets that ball loose. There are plays that Pickens. Here's what I think we can agree on. There are plays that Pickens takes off.
Yes.
Okay. Now, with the amount of snap, with you having the snap management aspect of that, and I think you even pointed out the old Baylor coach saying, you don't know how this is being taught at its core. It's okay in some aspects regarding the coaching staffs and how different teams approach different plays, in particular, where maybe a wide receiver is not expected to go 110%.
Yeah, as I say in the video, you see that in the college game sometimes because of the tempo, because of the higher volume of snaps. Here's where I come in on that overall. Do you take some snaps off because what I'm seeing on tape generally from Pickens is when he's not part of the progression, where he's kind of more of a, he knows the ball is not designed to go to him. That's when he starts to ramp down. That's when he starts to play with lower effort and kind of take some of those plays off. But my stance is you can't have both. You can't have both a reduced snap count to help load manage and then also take some plays off when you are on the field. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're going to play all the snaps and take the occasional snap off to help preserve yourself, you can make a better case for that, as we talk about with the college game a little bit. But you can't have only to play 60% of the snaps and also take some of those snaps off. You can't do both. I don't think that's acceptable.
Now, you obviously didn't have the time to do this, and in all fairness to George Pickens, we should go look at every play from the first 5 games, to look at Van Jefferson's effort, to look at Calvin Austin's effort, to look at Scotty Miller's effort. If we were to do that, and it's a dangerous assumption, what would we find? Guessing.
Those guys are more consistent with how hard they run the routes. And as I showed the one comparison on the same exact concept, the preseason play with Calvin Austin, they're running in mesh rail, maestro, whatever you want to call it. And
I like that, by the way. I like that play.
Yeah, no, I know you love the running back wheel, and hopefully they utilize that more. If you're the backside receiver running the dig, you're not part of the progression. They're reading the mesh, they're reading the sit, they're reading the wheel concept. You're really not going to get the ball unless something crazy happens. And we see that in the preseason. We see Austin run his route really hard. Ball doesn't go to him. We see Pickens run that route in the Cowboys game. He runs it at about half speed. Again, I understand that sometimes, and other receivers have talked about this before, when they know the ball is not coming to them, they will ramp things down some. But Pickens can't. You can't give him half the snaps off in a game and then say take 10 more off when you're on the field. If you're reducing those snaps to begin with to let him go all out when he's on the field, he's got to go out when he's on the field at all times.
How do you imagine that's perceived in the film room with team and coaches at its core? Because Mike Tomlin, what's Mike Tomlin's view on it, according to his presser?
Publicly, he has no issue with it.
Okay.
Is that your interpretation of it?
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of how it's viewed behind the scenes can obviously be different. And I would imagine that Arthur Smith and Zach Ghazzani don't love seeing that, considering they are high effort, go all out type of coaches that preach, being detailed and playing with fanatical effort.
I think this boils back to what you just said. I don't think you're going to have it both ways. If you're going to play them 95% of the snaps, then I think it's more livable to have, okay, ball's not going to you on this play. They're more apt to see some of that stuff. But when you're only playing, what was it, 59% of the snaps, I mean, are you trying to load management? Right.
It's hat on a hat, and that's why I have the issue with it. So I will say on the routes where Pickens was part of the progression, I thought his effort overall was fine. I didn't have an issue with that. So I do want to make that point clear. I understand what's in his head on some of the reps that we're seeing, largely, although there was the one that you pointed out of him on that crosser where he is part of the progression, and he's running. He certainly could have run that one harder. And there was one on a rollout, but there's still a chance Pickens could get the ball where he's just literally jogging and barely takes 3 steps off the ball. So there are some issues on tape. I do not deny that.
Okay. What's the other aspect of this?
I mean, to me, those are the two big categories. A, what's the reason for the reduced snaps? And B, is there a lack of effort? Now, I will say, and we can sit there and say it shouldn't have to be this way, but I do think you have to find ways to get Pickens engaged early. I do think another reason why you saw some effort wane, and it was happening more at the end of the game than it was at the start of the game, is because he's kind of mentally checked out. He's frustrated, not getting the ball, not getting involved. And that's how it was with AB. I mean, Ben talked about specifically that I had to get AB the ball early because he'd get frustrated. Not that his effort would really ever wane, but he'd be throwing Gatorade coolers over on the bench. And so I had to get him involved, get him engaged early to keep him going throughout. The same exists for Pickens. The same exists for a lot of, star and diva type receivers. Should it have to be that way? You would love it to not have to be that way, to have a Heinz Ward that'll just give you all out effort, no matter if it's 1 catch or 10 catches in a game. But there has to be more of an effort to get Pickens the ball early, because A, it's just good for the team, and it's good to good to keep Pickens engaged throughout the game.
I agree. And that was another point that Ben Roethlisberger made during his podcast is, look, do whatever you have to do. Short pass, quick slant, wide receiver screen, God forbid an end around, whatever you need to do with that kind of play. And look, George Pickens is not the only diva wide receiver in the NFL, right?
Sure. Correct.
But I do agree with that sentiment that coming out of the locker room, in my initial script, barring it just doesn't go off kilter for whatever reason, game circumstances, I'm finding ways to not only get the ball, make sure Pickens is the main target in several of those plays, but I try to make those as high percentage as possible on top of it, instead of 35-yard pass down the field. where the probability obviously decreases. So I think they can help themselves in that aspect on a game by game basis of getting him involved in games earlier with multiple targets.
Right, agree. 2 targets in the first half is not what you're looking for from this pass game from Pickens to make this offense as prolific as possible. So I know there's a lot of nuance here. There is no black and white of it's not a problem versus it is a problem. I mean, I try to be as level-headed as possible to consider all possibilities, in part because we talk about effort. That's a pretty weighty charge to say a guy's not trying. To me, I've always been very careful of saying those things because there's so much going on that you don't know. And to me, to say that a guy's showing a lack of effort is one of the more biting criticisms that you could have. Saying a guy misses a block, not strong enough, that's one thing, but lack of effort, lack of caring is to me a different level. So I'm always very careful in my language about those types of things. But yeah, if you look at the tape, I think there are examples where you would take issue with it.
All right, now the behavioral part of it. First and foremost, Mike Tomlin going Sergeant Schultz. I see nothing. I know nothing, about the eye black. I mean, do you believe that? Let me preface that with saying I don't care. I'm not offended by it. Some people are offended by that stuff with the language and the expletives and wide receivers calling attention to themselves that way. However, the Chad, what Chad Ochocinco used to do, and what several of them still do. At its core, I don't. None of that bothers me. Now it does certain people. It's easy to point to. At its core, I don't care what he wants to write on his eye black. The league might, but at its core, I don't. But beyond that, do you believe Mike Tomlin didn't know what was written on his eye black?
I don't know. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about if I believed his comment there or not, and doesn't matter if he saw it or not. It
takes a lot to offend me, though, so I'll put that out.
That's true. That's true. I think George Pickens had eye black that said take a running back in the first round. That's where you would have been like, okay, George, we got to move this thing back in. We got a problem here. The part that I think people will disagree with me the most on is some of the other stuff in terms of the eye black, in terms of the lack of media interviews, if you even care about those things, which I don't think many people do, about the play at the end of throwing Jordan Lewis down. They're not good things. I don't endorse them. He's going to get fined for it, as he should. I really don't care, though. I mean, I think generally what happened last year, what he was doing last year in terms of his comments that he made, the social media stuff he was doing, to me, were bigger distractions and bigger problems. To me, this is it's a drop in the bucket in terms of what he's doing right now. I don't think it's an issue, and I don't really care about it.
What about the slamming down of the helmet, supposedly? What about the, what else? Slumping, I think Ray Fittlepottle of the Post-Gazette, slumping on the bench. I think Fittlepottle said he's seen numerous times where teammates just don't want to sit next to him. Now I'm obviously not in the stadium to comment on that largely. So I don't know all that to be true, but and what about the grabbing of the face mask of the DB at the end of the game and dragging him down?
Yeah, I just don't care about any of those things. I don't think they're not issues that are going to materially impact the team in any sort of distraction sense.
Okay,
you got a frustrated player. They're frustrated, need some time by themselves to stew. That's pretty common.
All right. I like them less than you do. But once again, George Pickens is not the only player in the NFL that does this kind of stuff.
Yeah, a player gets frustrated. News at 11. I mean, they're not good things, and I want him to be engaged, and I can understand maybe the impact they can have on a guy's psyche overall. But I just think I do think, and again, people I think are going to disagree with me the most on this is I think sometimes we're looking for these Pickens juicy stories. Oh, did you guys see what George Pickens said? He's so angry on the sideline, and those things get played up and get a lot of attention, a lot of headlines. To me, it's kind of fishing for a story.
especially after a loss and especially with some of the actions that were easy to see on TV, and especially with the eye black, and especially with it being hyper focused on all of these things are easy to target in on George Pickens in this particular situation coming out of this particular game.
Right. So that's my stance.
Do I like it? And look, you're going to have a section of the fan base, especially when it comes to media interviews and after the game and things of things related to kind of that. Do I think that players should address the media to some, even if they want to give one word answers, because even those are going to be focused in on and say, okay, well, he met with the media, but look how he doesn't want to be there.
Well, that happened last week when Pickens
sure,
and the media got on him because he wouldn't talk about the fumble and just set him on to Dallas, and everyone got all mad about that.
But I would rather see him do that instead of just quote unquote. I think one report was hide in the equipment room during
don't go hide. I don't care. Go hide. I'd rather you say nothing than to say something and that becomes a headline. I'd rather the headline be he said nothing than and literally didn't show up than he said this and we're interpreting it 10 different ways. And that's where he got himself into trouble last year, like after the Colts game when he tried to explain away his non-blocking, which was a terrible play. He made a situation worse. So I'd rather Pickens just say nothing at all.
All right, and then if you're going to point the finger at him at that, then you got to say, well, where was Najee all this time during the off season? Although there's different media responsibilities and that goes with that, and Najee's had some pretty interesting when he has met the media. What I'm pointing out is this is just another aspect of it. It's the least finger pointing one of all of them, I think, when it comes to this. I mean, look, you go out there and catch 6 balls for 120 yards and a touchdown. Nobody cares about that other shit, right?
Yeah, and if you win, then no one cares, which no one was caring about things early on in the season. So the issue that I have is some of those lack of effort plays of him ramping down. That's really the only thing out of all of this that I care about right now.
Is George Pickens a uber talented wide receiver?
Yes.
Yes, I agree. Is George Pickens a guy that we're going to continue to talk about for one reason or the other related to some sort of behavioral effort type deal?
Yes.
Yes, I agree. So then it becomes on the onus of the coaching staff to work around all of that. And that includes the plays off, how they use them in snap management. Now, once again, I am not a fan of him. I think he should be out there more in some of those heavier packages. I don't think anything that we have seen at it after all your data and research and looking back at the big picture and then looking at the evaluation you did on the effort on the video and then circling back to previous games. Do I think any of what has happened, at least in regards to how they are treating his snap count and all, as being, well, we'll fix him, we'll lower his, in other words, behavioral or effort aspect of it? No. Does he? Are we going to have other conversations this year about George Pickens and anything related to what we just talked about?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Now, how valid they'll be, will it be as, I think, true and as problematic as the lack of effort that I talk about? I think some of it will become media fodder, that's just low-hanging fruit that's easy to discuss, an easy, quick headline. But yeah, we'll talk about it again, I'm sure.
All right. So what's the big picture takeaway here? In my opinion, it's George Pickens is a type of wide receiver that you just have to accept for who he is, what he can give you, and work around it as a coaching staff the best that you can.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I don't want to sit there and say just accept it and that's who he is. And
well, how do you change it?
I mean, it's slowly. It's not going to be an overnight type of thing, and I think that you have to. There's different ways, and I will trust Tomlin to do that because I think he can connect and handle players better than most coaches. Not to say that he can fix it and make it 100% and turn him into Heinz Ward. He won't, but I think you work with guys and have heart to hearts and show it on tape. And I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways to address it. I don't want to sit there and say not address it and not try to improve upon it, but I understand that receivers are going to be receivers sometimes, and those guys that are number ones and super talented like him tend to have those types of personalities that are super alpha and can be difficult to manage, and it just kind of comes with the territory. It's not the first receiver that's done that in Pittsburgh, and won't be the last.
All right, but he is nearly 2.5 seasons into his NFL career at this point. How much significantly do you think any of this is going to go away?
I can't say for sure. Again, I think compared to last year, what he was doing last year, late in the season, this has been better because he's not lashing out on social media. Like last year, he was basically taking like public shots at Kenny Pickett on social media and a little bit with his commentary as well, which to me was a lot more problematic, a lot more potential for distraction than anything else he's doing right now in terms of quote unquote antics.
All right. I mean, we still got more than a half a season to go, though. So, I mean, the whole social media thing, yada yada. We might not have just crossed that particular bridge yet.
Sure, maybe not, but we're not there right now, and it hasn't happened. And if it does, then we'll talk about it.
All right. Earlier or last season, right ahead of Christmas, I wrote the article about I think people should think twice about buying a George Pickens jersey for Christmas as a present, or make sure they get a receipt, moving forward. In other words, I kind of wonder if he'll see a second contract with this team. Where do you weigh in on that at this point?
I don't really have a lot of commentary or thoughts on mid-season. Will guys get contracts or not? Because so much can change over the course of a season. So I like to view those things after seasons end and we have more totality and finality on situations. If he has a really good season, like I said this before the year, that he could be a 30 million type of receiver, we'll just have to wait and see. I don't spend much time thinking about mid-season. Will this guy get a contract after the season or not?
Okay, I really wonder if they're going to give him that big deal. And look, I mean, that's going to be a huge. You even pointed it out in an article that you wrote earlier this offseason. Get ready for the drama after this season.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can predict that regardless of how the season goes out. Great season or bad season, Pickens will want a contract, and I would expect that to be a storyline this offseason during training camp, during OTAs, etc.
The other aspect of this is, and we'll see how it plays out here in the next couple of weeks as a whole. Will the Steelers go out and get a veteran wide receiver, more particularly one like Davante Adams, and what that could do to not only unleash more production for George Pickens, but maybe have a big brother, someone that he looks up to that can maybe walk him through some of these aspects and try to help be in his ear in the moments that the coaching staff can't. Someone on his level, someone who's been through it. How much would something like that potentially help George Pickens? It wouldn't hurt in all aspects of what I just named right there. But how much would that help?
It's impossible to say. I don't mean to evade the question, but there's so many variables. How well do the personalities of Adams and Pickens mesh, and will Adams be receptive to being a mentor, and how well can you mentor as you're just kind of getting to Pittsburgh and learning on the fly yourself? Maybe, like you said, can't hurt. How much will it help? I have no idea. There is a veteran right now in Van Jefferson, so it's not like there's not a veteran presence of some sort in that wide receiver room. It's not exactly a top-tier receiver the way that the Davante Adams would be, but I just have no idea.
All right, how can any of this get thrown back in your face or my face?
I think my criticism, understandably,
you've been pretty neutral with it. I think I've been a little bit more outspoken than you, right?
Well, yeah, I would say that I, generally speaking, care about this story less than others. I know I've done a lot of research into this story, but in terms of how much is it bothering me, I think it might bother me less than like 99% of this fan base. And maybe I'll be proven wrong about it. And I think the criticism for me is Alex, you're too lax on him being frustrated in the antics, and that's emblematic of a bigger problem, and it's going to continue to fester and all those kinds of things. Again, I don't want to say they're not things at all that shouldn't be addressed. You don't want to see them throwing down Jordan Lewis, and he'll get fined for that, as he should. I said it was not a good look and uncalled for. But I think some of this is overblown. I think some of this is the low-hanging fruit of another Pickens story, which is easy to do, easy to talk about, and a loss, and detracts from some of the other things that are going on.
I would like to see, obviously, I think as we pinpointed here, there are things with Pickens, obviously, that you would not like to see. I think you'd like to see a higher effort. I think you'd like to see less antics,
Sure.
those kind of things. But in the same breath, and I've said this since day one, he's an extremely talented receiver, and that's why I say, man, that's why I go back to my expert analysis of. He can't make plays for you. He cannot exhibit that talent that he has when he's not on the field for 41% of the snaps.
Right, I get that. And again, I take issue with the lack of effort that he showed on some of those plays. This is not complete defense of George Pickens. I mean, I showed a bunch of examples. We sit there and say, okay, he's not running, even compared to previous routes he's run. I compared the one, remember the Atlanta play at the end of the first half on that catch he had along the sideline? They called the same play against Dallas on that 3rd and 24. You match up the routes. Pickens is running that one against Atlanta harder than he is versus Dallas. And so we're seeing direct comparisons of him, gearing down in those moments. So there is issue there, certainly. But I think the other stuff is more noise. That's to me the only real issue of substance, which is a big issue, to be clear.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Now, what have we accomplished today in this? How long have we spent on this? 20 minutes?
Probably longer than that. Yeah, I don't know what we actually accomplished. I just wanted to at least
my overview. What we have accomplished is it's what this coming out of this game specifically is. It shouldn't be as hyper focused as it is on George Pickens.
I mean, that's my personal view. I think you again.
With the snaps and with the snap percentages and rolling all that back to the season, and the way Mike Tomlin has addressed snap management, and then the whole hyper focused on Pickens' effort in the social media video and all like that.
Yeah, I just think there's level of nuance and shades of gray to this conversation. That's all I'm trying to present here, is that there's a lot of factors, a lot of things going on, and there are some things that I think you can and should criticize Pickens for. I have, and there's some of it that I believe is just noise, which I think there is.
All right. We will definitely track this going into the Raiders game, for sure, because he's going to be on. I would like to think that Mike Tomlin's going to have another powwow with him and said, "Look, you're high, going to be in high focus this week." But things I would definitely like to see, and he cannot control when he's rolled out there in as far as snap management goes. But I would like to see the coaching staff do a better job of maybe getting the football earlier in the games. I think you agree with that.
Yes.
And I would like to see, when he is out there, a greater percentage of higher effort on plays that he's asked to block on plays that he's asked to run routes on. Some discernible, difference within being able to view that, and obviously production.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all those things.
But I'm not silly enough to know that the Tiger doesn't generally change his stripes either. So I think he is just this certain kind of NFL wide receiver that the coaching staff better do a better job of working and with managing. Period. You got to try to manage that and not destroy the attitude of your entire team along with it.
Yeah, he's always going to have this edge to him, and these kind of ebbs and flows of him getting frustrated and lashing out a bit and not being fully mature. I mean, that's always going to happen. So you try to round out the edges as best as you can, try to work with it and understand that's going to be the cost of doing business whenever you have a George Pickens on your roster.
All right. And I can guarantee you this is not the last talk we have about George Pickens this year.
Right. All right, Dave, let's get off of George Pickens here. Let's talk about the All-22 at large in this game, starting with the Steelers offense. Again, non-Pickens related. What were your impressions of the offense on the All-22 and of one Justin Fields?
I think Justin Fields could have made there, particularly, I think there's a couple of throws he should not have made. I do think that he got shortchanged on a couple of them with the outcomes. The one down the sideline to Connor Hayward early. Mike Tomlin, of course, highlighted that if you hit that, how does that change the complexion of the game? Well, it wasn't completed. But I like the call of it. I like everything about it, other than the total outcome. I thought the ball. I mean, look, some will tell you, and I think Ben said this. You'd like maybe to see your receiver or your tight end in this case run through it. He kind of reckoned it to. That's why you don't slide into first base. Whatever, it was incomplete pass. I didn't think overall. Anything Justin Fields had pressure in his face. He had to let that thing rip at the time. I like that. There were instances of pass over to the right side on that play that we talked about, the George Pickens effort on. I think that's the one that went to Van Jefferson, right? No, that was the one that got overthrown. But the or incomplete to Pickens on the right side. The one that he threw to Jefferson, more of the 50-50 ball, Pickens was going the other way. I think Calvin Austin, I think you pointed out, you don't know what was going through Fields' head, but it sure seemed like he had an opportunity maybe on that read to get that ball to Calvin Austin there, as opposed to going to Jefferson on the right side and throwing up what was could be termed an interceptable ball. The Pickens throw on third down that went through his hands over on the sideline over there. Very crucial third down play that people try to say, well, that's not on Pickens. That was high. That hit Pickens. Pickens makes that catch 98 times out of 100, I think.
In his sleep. He's got to make that catch.
With that one. Largely, I thought, once again, that Fields played within probably what he was asked to do in this game. Was it his best game overall of the five that he's played? No. Was it his worst? Well, he didn't have the losing the football and the turnovers and the hugely negative plays. I thought it could have been better, but I don't think it was overly egregious on top of it. There were throws that I think he probably should have made that he didn't, and there were throws that he did make that he shouldn't have.
Yeah, I just didn't think he saw the field as well in this game. I think there were multiple and too many instances of him missing open receivers and needing to work his progression or turning down some opportunities. It kind of felt a little preseason where he wasn't kind of just ripping it. He felt a little tight, felt a little, I don't want to say scared, but just a very conservative in this game for whatever reason. I felt like once, actually it was interesting. We kind of talked about this Monday, but whenever he had come back into the game after getting checked for his concussion, you saw two throws of him ripping it underneath to Jefferson the first time. They ran that mesh sit play the second time at Jefferson again, and so kind of got him into a rhythm, got him going. I want to see that more from Fields, of just top of your drop, hitch, deliver, and be a little more decisive. I felt he was a little unsure of himself, a little indecisive in this game.
And statistically, I think it's been brought out that the quicker that he gets the ball out, the better for him, right?
Yeah, I mean that's probably true for most quarterbacks. This usually means something's open, but yeah, I think you want your quarterback to get into a rhythm.
All right. anything left on field. I mean, it was quite great play design on the double Dino on the touchdown to Hayward. That was a easy pitch and catch. The other one was the shovel pass to Freiermuth. So at least they got in the end zone a couple of times that way. This team still lacks explosive passing plays down the field. Another thing that Mike Tomlin pointed out, you got to start seeing an uptick of pushing the football down the field. Largely, when you look at his average depth of, I think, attempt was high, but his average depth of completion was low, and you hate to see those large gaps within that.
Yeah, I'll say on play action, Pittsburgh was 3 of 8 for 26 yards and 1 first down. Their 2 successful plays was that screen to Najee, which was a play action look. And also, we call this quote unquote successful. There was the roughing the passer, which was not part of play action, was not influenced by play action, but they picked up a first down that way as well. So play action continues to me to be a big problem for this offense. And I know people will say they got to run the ball better. That's not necessarily true. There's data that says you don't have to be a great running team to have successful play action. You have to sell the run well, and Pittsburgh does not sell the run well. They don't have good fakes. They play too high. They have high hat as an offensive line with signals pass. They don't sell the run well enough for play action to be effective, and they're using play action at a really high rate, and it's not been successful.
All right, let's boil back to kind of coming out of that game, our podcast on Monday. If if you knew 100% Russell Wilson was 100% healthy this week, did Justin Fields do enough, not only through the first 4 games, but the 5th game specifically, to deserve to start this one against the Raiders?
Even though I just had some critiques of Fields' play in this game, I would still stick with Justin Fields.
I would as well.
And I think that's ultimately what will happen, but we'll see how the week goes. And yeah, just to add on to your comment, I love that call on the Y leak from Hayward. And they did that so well because what they did was they made it look like their typical boot action stuff, which is a flat receiver, a crossing route from the backside, and typically a corner route. And they run that play 1,000 times. It's such a staple play for them. They ran the same look, but then had Fields come back on the other side to Hayward on the Y leak. And Dallas took the cheese, and it was so open, and that's a huge play that was missed, and just so close, but so far.
All right, some other observations offensively when it comes to this team. I thought the running game, especially when Najee was in there, I thought we saw a little bit more openings, obviously, for him. Overall, I thought we saw at least a little bit better out of the run game. It still wasn't good enough. I do think, obviously Sayamalo had a tough pass rush on that one that he got bowled over on. And was the offensive line absolutely perfect in this game? No. I thought interior wise, though, my contention coming out of this one, Sayamalo, Frazier, and McCormick. I thought McCormick played well, to be honest with you. And I was a little bit kind of, I was that guy that's like, this is a guy that only played left guard primarily in college. Kind of wonder how it's going to go shifting sides. I don't think you would have known. If nobody told you, I don't think you would have known when it came to experience over there. I thought he represented himself well overall on that side. I think even in the state of this offensive line and the injuries that they have gone through globally, I think they have a good enough offensive line to get some things done, to win some ball games, basically. Now, I do believe Broderick Jones remains the weakest link at this time on this offensive line. I think he needs to play better, but I thought, and look, the run game, especially if this is going to be and is your identity and all like that, the run game just needs to be better. For it just to be a little bit better tasting saltine coming out of the Cowboys game is not enough. It's got to be much, much better than that. But I thought there were at least some holes, especially when it came to Najee in this game within that. I will say another kind of global takeaway when it comes to offense was the fact that we talked about first and 10, I think, situations and talking about, like to see more passing out of that. I think they did a good job of breaking tendencies on that in this game and throwing more in first and 10 situations. But here's what it boils down to right now. And obviously, you'd like to see this team score more points, yada, yada. This team on first and 10 right now specifically is not good enough, period, when it comes to expected points added, whether it be rush or drop back. This is where all the problems obviously start, I think, with this offense, is they have got to find a way to be better on first downs, to help the drive get along a little bit better. Now, I did not drill out garbage time in looking at some things on StatHead here, but I did take out the kneel downs and the no plays. The Steelers are averaging 4.4 yards per play on first and 10s so far this season, and only the Browns are worse at 3 yards per play. So this isn't, obviously, one game against the Cowboys did not, was not the tipping point here, but I think the main takeaway here on the heels of the Cowboys game is this team needs to be better on first downs, first and 10 in particular.
Yeah, I agree. And I have the article up this morning about the first down offense and how poor they've been. And that was one of my biggest critiques under Matt Canada. In 2021, they were 32nd on first down. In 2022, they were 30th. In 2023, they finished 18th. But under Canada, before he was fired, they were about the worst in football. And right now they are 31st. They're averaging 3.2 yards on first down runs. That's tied for last. Yet they're 11th in first down runs overall. So they're running at a high rate and not getting much because of it. And it's putting themselves into second and longs. They have the third most second and long situations in the NFL, or the third most second and long situations this season. So they're playing for third down, and it's just not been a good strategy overall. So got to be better on first down, no question about that.
I thought they're obviously worse in design quarterback runs in this game. I didn't feel like there was maybe enough of them in this game when it comes to Fields. Another thing that I did for research coming out of this game is look at explosive plays, both for the Steelers and league wide. So far this season, if you want to consider an explosive run, which coming more the norm, being 10 yards or more, the Steelers, I believe, have 15 of those so far. And how many of those are Fields? I forgot to drill that down. But 15 runs of 10 yards or more, pass plays of 20 yards or more, not counting penalties that add on or pass interferences and that kind of stuff. Just 13 of those. So they have a total of 28 quote unquote explosive plays based on 10 yards or more on running plays, 20 yards or more on passing plays. And that has them ranked right damn near in the middle of the league, 28 total at, I think, 16th overall.
Well, that's better than maybe what I would have guessed it would have been. Not great, but at least it's average. I should also mention they're picking up a first down on first down 11% of the time, which is 32nd in football. So they're not stringing first downs together. And again, that goes back to they're playing for third and short instead of trying to avoid third down altogether.
All right, now let me argue with myself because I do that quite regularly when I'm not on the podcast here. The Kansas City Chiefs have 6 runs of 10 yards or more on the season. They have one more explosive play through the air than the Steelers do at 14. They have 20 explosive plays based on that criteria that I just laid out on the season there, and only the Chargers have fewer at 17. Who would have bet that the Chargers with the with the run game that they have, we've seen them bust off those runs. Now they have played one less game too, right?
Yeah, they had a bye.
They had a bye, so you have to take that into consideration there. But But the Chiefs also have this cat named Patrick Mahomes. That obviously that's a key factor within that. And the Chiefs are also very good on 1st and 10 situations as well. Near the top, I think, quarter of the league when it comes to 1st and 10 yardage gains. So can you, is it fine to explain some of this away, why it's okay for where I'm going here is, explosive plays, run and pass, mean a lot more to the Pittsburgh Steelers than they do to the Kansas City Chiefs because A, they're better on 1st down situations, and second, they have, arguably the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, the Steelers are not the Chiefs. The Chiefs get to be the outlier because they are just this rare team with a generational quarterback and a great coach and just a really good scheme overall. And listen, we talk about the too high world the NFL is playing today. That's largely due to one Patrick Mahomes. Teams going, we can't stop Mahomes. They're killing us. We got to play too high and force them to play small ball. And the Chiefs are rolling with the punches and throwing short. So as you said, the success on 1st down speaks to, okay, teams are forcing the Chiefs to throw short, and Kansas City saying, okay, we'll take it, we'll throw short. We won't hit the deep ball. We don't have some of those weapons that we've had in the past either, and Tyreek Hill, et cetera. So we'll play that game and adjust well. The Chiefs are able to adjust to what's in front of them. Pittsburgh is always more one step behind.
All right, those are my larger takeaways from the offense. What did you think about the running game? Thought it was a little bit better, especially coming out, not Najee specifically.
Mm-hmm. It was better, but in some ways I feel worse about it because why didn't they get more? Like I felt like they blocked things up pretty well overall. So why did Najee Harris only average 3 yards per carry? Why did this run game still feel so difficult against the Colts? At least I understood it. Okay, they just blocked miserably, and I can at least understand why the success wasn't there. So if anything, this may sound a bit weird. I think there's more criticism for Najee in this game than there was for the Colts game, where he got a ton of criticism for. I think in this game, there was one nice zone where I pointed out where I think he showed good patience to let McCormick come off the initial block and take out the linebacker. But this one felt a little bit more like Najee kind of getting what was just blocked. And he did run hard and did fall forward, but I felt like, I felt like the run blocking was not terrible in this game. And so the fact that the results were only marginally better is problematic to me. I do think Broderick Jones was struggling as a run blocker. I thought the other guys blocked it up pretty well, and it should have resulted in more yardage.
It looked better aesthetically as far as being blocked up when he was in the game, but I'm with you. The results did not match what we saw as far as some of the overall plays and the way they were blocked up.
There was one
certainly from the week prior against the Colts.
Yeah, there was one in particular on the left side where the backside D-tackle came in and tripped up Najee, and it could have been blocked better. I think McCormick could have done a better job, but that's a play where we sit there and say, man, if you had a more explosive running back, he's going to get past that backside D-tackle and be able to hit that hole, and there was a lane there. So, again, I know people may disagree. I defended Najee last week. I think this week there's actually more criticism for him. I think he did a nice job in pass pro. I think he was really solid in pass protection, and the screen was a good play. But I just think there could have been more for the run game.
And I think Mike Tomlin summed it up with his thoughts on the run game, right?
Yeah, Pittsburgh didn't control it. Their whole ethos is to control the run game. They have not done so in a couple of weeks. Other quick thoughts here. I thought pass protection was really good overall. I was really concerned about some of those sim pressures that Dallas shows, really tripping up Pittsburgh in this one. Dallas did not run them as much as I thought they would, but even when they did, I thought Pittsburgh handled them well. I know Dallas was down so many of their key rushers and Parsons and Lawrence. They lose Nealand early in that game, but I thought the pocket was really clean for Fields on the whole. Sayamalu did get run over on that one play. That play aside, it was a really clean pocket. I thought Dan Moore had a heck of a game in pass pro. I thought that was one of the best games of his career in terms of pass pro. Again, understanding level of competition he was facing, the injuries Dallas had, but I thought he had a really good game.
Overall, did I expect more out of this offense, especially against this beat up Cowboys defense? Yes. And I think Mike Tomlin would agree with that as well. It should have looked better than what it did. Should have been more points on the scoreboard. Run game should have been better, a lot better than what it was. should have had a handful more of explosive plays in this one. So I mean, it look, the defense definitely had their problems in this game as well, but the offense was not without blame, without a doubt.
All right, defensively, Dave, what are your impressions, your takeaways?
Boy, they sure like playing a lot of zone, a lot of cover three this year, don't they? I mean, that's who they are. And I think obviously they have enough on tape at this point that along with the more communication issues, it's not as clean as you'd like, and it does make you wonder with losing two pass rushers now on one side, and playing a lot of zone behind it. You do wonder how much you're going to set yourself up for going forward of coverage and pass rush not matching up with each other there. And in some instances, when they were able to get a lot of instances when they were able to get Beanie Bishop on the field, and the Steelers did run some man instances, they were able to isolate Beanie and either rub him off with some motions. It looked like Dallas knew what they were looking at a lot of times.
Yeah, I just thought there was too much confusion defensively. I thought Beanie in particular looked really lost in this game. There's a lot of plays on tape where I just don't know what he's doing or trying to do. Not even on some of the completions. On that one long completion down the middle, I think Pittsburgh was in two-man, which they almost never run. So you're playing trail technique on that. I don't know. It was a really good ball by Dak. I kind of maybe give a little more grace than I initially did watching that play live and reacting to it on the Monday show. But yeah, Beanie there's just too much on his plate right now. You can't ask this rookie undrafted corner to do everything for your defense. You're going to have some pain through that. And so I know I've advocated for the committee approach or for to get away from the committee approach, to have the every down approach. And I can appreciate Pittsburgh doing that, but there's just too much on that kid's plate right now. And he's struggling. He's in over his head. He's drowning. And I know they're waiting on Cam Sutton to come back, but it's still a couple weeks away. They got to do something there.
And look, how many Dave Weekly asked me about this as well too on my spot yesterday there. I mean, there's not really many options there anyway. They only dressed how many wide receivers? I mean, how many corners did they even dress for this game?
Porter, Jackson, Bishop, Pierre. Anyone else?
That was it, wasn't it?
Was it because Graham was still in the practice squad? Yeah, they only dressed 4 corners.
That's rare too, right?
Yeah, that's some weird roster constructions this year. Yeah, so I know there. I mean, I'm probably a little too casual when I say do something because there isn't a whole lot to do.
Right. Again, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, what do you do?
Well, I said
I told Dave Weekly, you just got to roll him out there and have him, hopefully he grows through this.
Yeah, this is
until Sutton gets back.
Right. This is Pittsburgh's own fault for putting themselves in this position. Like they even admitted at the end of the summer, like we don't have anything at slot corner. Terrell Austin literally said, whoever is healthy will get the job. We just have literally nothing right now. They had Arnold, he got hurt, and other guys got injured as well. I go back to, I said preseason, sign Patrick Peterson. They should have signed Patrick Peterson. You could have had him out there in these situations. He wouldn't be blowing coverages, wouldn't be this unsure. Yeah, he's not an athlete. He's only going to play slot corner. I don't want him playing outside corner. They should have signed Patrick Peterson. They'd be in a much better place right now.
I mean, they're not even playing a lot of kind of split coverages either, right? Or how if you're going to play that much zone, you can't have the you want to limit communication issues as much as you can, but they really show up, especially in some of these zone situations.
I think they're going to have to play some more man going forward because they're going to have to blitz more.
I think so.
I mean, there's creative ways you can send. You can send 4 creatively. It doesn't always have to be these all-out jailhouse blitzes, but they're going to have to blitz more with all the outside linebacker injuries that they have. There's just no other getting around that. So they're going to have to probably start playing some different coverages behind, and we'll have to see how that works. But that defense is going to have to shift here at least until Highsmith or Herbig comes back, and probably Highsmith first. And
we saw communications, miscommunication start early in this game, and then you have Elliott tripping on that one touchdown to the running back, and mean, they did, they did take the football away, but Dak played a part in that.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Pittsburgh. I mean, they took the ball away in some key red zone moments. One thing that really irked me, I was watching it late last night. It may seem minor and not talked about much. Pittsburgh has to rush smarter. The number of times that the same rushers are in the same gap and are just bumping into each other and bouncing off each other like bumper cars is ridiculous. I mean, I know it can be tough to coordinate a rush. Never quite sure what the other guy is doing. It's not like you can kind of say like pre-snap, hey, I'm going to rush this way. I'm going to use the spin move right here. But they got to rush smarter. I mean, I'm going to put up a compilation of just number of times the guys are in the same gap and, this guy's spinning into the A gap or the B gap, and the rushers trying to power rush into the same gap. They just get all bunched up. I know they got pressure in this one still, but there's just some really sloppy stuff out there. You should see the one where Herbig tried to spin inside and literally just ran Cam Hayward over. They collided, and just some stuff on tape that irks me.
I apologize for moving backwards here, but I had this graphic pulled and I meant to cover it when we were talking about Pickens. He still ranks in obviously the good sector when it comes to separation and all.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And fantasy.
And Jefferson's like at the bottom of that.
Yeah. Van Jefferson's down. He's going to catch a cold down there where he's at. I think fantasy points, they have this ASS metric, average separation score. If you're a true nerd and true follower of the NFL, and even if you play fantasy, which I know a lot of people do, I get no compensation for this whatsoever. But I really like what those guys have got going on over there with metrics specifically when it comes to analytics, advanced analytics at fantasy points. And I think I'm really intrigued about this ASS metric, and it gives me another chance to say ass too.
That's a heck of a name for it. Yeah, it is. It's a little weird though, the way they try to gauge zone separation, which feels less dictated by the receiver and more just dictated by the overall coverage scheme. I don't know. That's just my thought.
Right. But I meant to include that when talking about Pickens earlier, and I did. And the other obvious graphic that I have pulled up here is the defensive coverages that all teams have run throughout the season. The Steelers cover 3 48% of the time. Who has it more than they do? The Panthers, I think, at 56%. So I think the Steelers are second in the NFL when it comes to cover 3 specifically. Their second most coverage is cover 1, which also middle of the field safety.
Yeah, a lot of single high, middle of the field close there. What else here defensively? What do you think about Patrick Queen? I'm trying to collect my thoughts on the play of Patrick.
It still could be better. Still could be missed tackles, arm tackles, either overrunning and trying to get an arm on guys, trying to get off some of these blocks when these offensive linemen get to the second level. The takeaway is it needs to be better. Period. End of story. And that's what it's been through the first 5 games of the season. They need better play from him in the middle.
I struggle with the communication aspect of it all because I think Queen is really smart. I think he's seeing things really well. I think he's a great film study guy. I think he anticipates well in some of the run game stuff. Like, you can tell he knows where the ball is going. Like I mentioned, that one toss play on 3rd and short when Dak checked, Queen checked and got Pittsburgh into a good front, and he almost came so close to the tackle there, but didn't make the play. And that's kind of the story. Got to make these plays. There was just another time where he's putting Hayward down a gap on a run that goes to the side that Queen is pointing out. I think he's seeing it well. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I want to see more splash. Obviously, I want to see better play overall. I'm just kind of wondering why everything seems so smart against the run, but in coverage, they're just really wilting in terms of being very undisciplined. That is hard for me to figure out.
Well, the narrative going into him leaving Baltimore, obviously, and coming to Pittsburgh and wearing the green dot was, is he a better guy when he doesn't have extra responsibilities on his plate?
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I imagine most players are when they can focus on their job as opposed to the job of all 11. But I'm saying is that I think he's really smart and is getting some of these calls in, and against the run, like they're fitting it well, they're adjusting well. I'm not seeing issues there. I'm not seeing big breakdowns. So why is it such an issue in coverage? Is that less on Queen and more on just young guys like Beanie Bishop not doing a good job of understanding things and adjusting on the fly? I don't know. I'm just kind of racking my brain about that.
I mean, the takeaway is he's got to play better.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's got one tackle for a loss this season. I need more splash out of Patrick Queen. My last note overall is Joey Porter Jr. Thought he did a nice job in coverage, a bounce back game there, great interception. But man, Dave, these punch outs without trying to wrap up first. I got two examples on tape of him doing that. The one obvious one on the sideline, but there was one in the run game later that I showed on Twitter. You can't do that, man. I mean, that's just what are you doing out there?
If you're gonna do it, you better be Peanut Tillman.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not punching him out. But even if you force the fumble in space, it's just really bad technique. I mean, I think he's improved as a tackler. I thought he improved last year as a tackler. He got better.
He's a lot more physical. Yeah. And I think Ben was right to point as well. That was a tough interception they made. It's not often you see corners over the shoulder make that kind of wide receiver-ish interception, if you will. So kudos to him on that. I agree. I think just overall, and here's the other thing too. You talk about the man situation. When they play so much zone too, and especially when they play Dante Jackson off, they play him off in some situations where it feels like it's if the quarterback decides to go that way in, I don't know, 2nd and 5, 4, 5, 6 yard situation, that is an automatic first down.
Yeah, there were a couple of times where they're playing off. I mean, I get sometimes you vary coverages, and if team wants to throw a 5-yard curl, it happened a couple of times in this game. It's just frustrating for this defensive struggle. CeeDee Lamb caught one pass after the first quarter in this game for 9 yards, and Dallas still racked up a bunch of points and yards, and other guys won, and so that's frustrating.
Obviously, the talk about this game would be a lot different if they jump on that fumble that Landon Roberts caused, or B, they stop that 4th down play.
Yeah, what you think about the 4th down play? Do you have any different thoughts on that? Watching that,
that's hard to cover. I kind of wonder what
was Beanie doing on that play?
Were they trying to bracket Lamb, make sure the ball just didn't go to Lamb?
That was my initial thought, but then Beanie came off of that on that mesh, and I don't really know what Beanie was doing after that. So, yeah, it was. I mean, they're calling like cone, where the receiver's running shallow. The safety's going to cut it so the corner doesn't have to. I don't know. It's a little hard to get a read on the coverage there, but I mean that's what they were calling. They were getting Elliott to cut the crosser,
and it was good play call by them, and they definitely executed.
Yeah, remember now again, I don't blame Tomlin for taking the time out there, but whenever Dallas first came to the line of scrimmage on that 4th down play, they did not have TJ Watt chip. They came out in a wider 2-by-2 formation when Tomlin called the timeout and Dallas reset, went to the second play call, which Mike McCarthy confirmed post game. They made sure that Watt was chipped. They still went 2-by-2, but they had a chip on Watt. Jeremiah Moon spun, which I know is his go-to move. He loves the inside spin that allowed Dak to get outside the pocket. I don't know where you come in on that. It's a risk reward. If you spin and you beat him, you get the sack, you win the game. If you don't and he failed, then you give up the edge and allow Dak to break, contain, extend the play, make an easier throw potentially. So that's just kind of the cost of doing business of it all.
Yeah. Makes you wonder maybe what happens if Herbig's in there, right?
Yeah, would he had a better move? Probably. Anyway, so we're getting along here in the show, but those are my thoughts.
All right. We will. Anything else we need to get to before we get to a couple emails here?
Queen did have a really fun coffee house stunt where you faked that like you're going to drop into coverage and blitz. It did not get the sack. Kind of had a pressure, but I'll put that clip on Twitter. That was always fun to see. Always a crowd pleaser. The coffee house stunt.
All right, let's get to some reader emails and close out the show here. We'll start with Michael Smith. NFL quarterbacking is about pre-snap reads and quick decision-making. That's what differentiates quarterbacks. Let's see what Russell's experience gives us over Fields' running ability. A lot of quarterbacks are good in their late 30s despite slowing down. Hello, Mr. Flacco, he writes, who was never fast in the first place, but could still push the ball downfield even now. Yeah, that's and we talked about kind of what are the pluses, the gains, and what you lose by going with a guy like Russell Wilson. And that's why I asked specifically for several of you to make arguments of why you think maybe this team should turn to Russell Wilson, and the decision making and the knowing what he's seeing and the pre-snap reads. How is what you gain with that, and maybe better play action techniques and more under center experience. Could that be the tipping point? And until we see it, it's hard to obviously know for sure, but it most certainly is an argument for people to make on the other side of the fence as to why this team should go to Russell Wilson instead of Justin Fields, right?
Yeah, I get the argument. I get the case to be made there. We'll see if it happens. I'm not getting the sense that it is, but I think this is the week we get, I don't want to say finality, but we put the health issue aside from Wilson, and Tomlin's making a decision based on two healthy quarterbacks, and that's going to be a change, and we'll see which direction he officially or at least unofficially goes.
All right, Brian DeSecco has a question specifically for you, Alex. Alex, I was interested in your comment on Monday that you'd only switch from Fields to Wilson if you saw something that changed your mind. Based on what I've seen, he writes, Fields is a tremendous athlete, great arm, and turnover fumble prone. It's the same as what I thought he was when he came over from Chicago. We haven't seen anything from Wilson, period. But based on what he did last year and what I know Fields is, I believe Wilson should keep his starting spot until Wilson shows otherwise. It seems you must have seen enough from Fields to shift your stance from Wilson being QB1 before the season. I'm curious what improvements you've seen from Fields from his time in Chicago and what it would take for you to revert back to Wilson as the starter.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, I was in the camp of start Wilson. I was fine with him being QB1 to start the year. And so this is not, I think some in the media, even probably more nationally, are kind of been like all in for Fields from the get-go. And their commentary has kind of always reflected that no matter the circumstances. I think I've been light on my feet, as Tom would say, and based on the evidence, based on the tape, had different opinions and kind of switched. To answer the question, what have I seen differently from Fields? I think he's been a much more routine player. I think he's been a lot more accurate at all levels, but especially the short stuff, the routine stuff. It's not been perfect, but it's been a lot better. I think largely he has taken good care of the football. It's been a little bit messier last 2 weeks. You're playing from behind. That's going to more naturally happen, but I think he's done a much better job of making smarter decisions, taking care of the football, and playing clean overall. And so those two things are the big differences I've seen in his play.
All right. I like the ability of the run. I just wish they'd use the run aspect of him more and the on the move aspect with him a little bit more. And I would like to see him do a better job of reading things out. Maybe some of the decision making that he makes. I mean, look, the proof is in the pudding as far as points scored and the first down success that I pointed to. Whoever's in there under center, first down needs to be better, put a little bit less strain. And neither one of them is Patrick Mahomes, so they've got to find a way to have more. Just as an offense in total, more 10-yard runs and more 20-yard passing plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think the supporting cast has not been great for Fields either. So I give a little bit of context in that my evaluation of his play. If Hay was able to make that catch, if some of those plays get made by his receivers, we're talking about a different game, different stat line for Justin Fields. So again, I understand the idea of going back to Wilson. It's not a crazy thought, just in the way it wasn't crazy to suggest Fields be the starter from the get-go. But I just, like I said, as the reader mentioned, I'd have to have some compelling reason, and that would be turnovers if he was really reckless with the football and making some really poor decisions to put the team in harm's way. That's when I would switch or go back, however you want to couch it. And I just haven't seen enough of that to make that change.
And I'm with you on my thoughts of, I think that regardless of Russell Wilson's health this week, I think Fields has done enough to have one more start, but I'm also not ignorant enough at this point from what I've seen to say, you know what, change the depth chart. Justin Fields should be number one, no questions asked, moving forward here. I do think this is more on a game-by-game basis, and especially in the win-loss column specifically. Now, do wins trump performance?
I mean, there's a relationship obviously between the two, but yeah, I mean, you're asking what if Fields plays a great game and they lose? How do you judge that? Do you judge the loss? Do you judge his individual play?
Or the other way?
Yeah, or the other way. I think we always kind of look at the tape and say the tape tells the story, but I think you make those determinations when you're in those situations. It can be kind of hard to judge that, predicting it out as opposed to just seeing what actually happened.
All right, Todd Gensler writes in, coaching failure. How much failure comes onto the coaches with this team? So we got another one of these chicken and eggs here with the coaches. Failing to scheme some of the best players to their strengths, failing to come up with less predictable offensive game plans, utilization of their best players, Pickens, Freiermuth, or lack thereof, our vaunted defense, or is it just bad personnel? Bingo. I mean, he hit all the kind of the cliche things there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of outlined. It's hard to distill the issues into kind of one clean sentence. I would just say Pittsburgh has been really poor on weighty downs these last two games, and they've just not made the plays that were there, offensively and defensively. I think if you look at those two things in short bullet points, those are the two main reasons why Pittsburgh has lost.
Based on the personnel that this team had going into week one, all right, and taking into account, obviously, the offensive line injuries and really the running back injuries now at this point that this team has had. But overall, you still have the same receiving core overall. And technically, if you want to look at starters, you can decipher how much Jaylen Warren would be eaten into Najee's snaps, and that's obviously a fair critique. And obviously, how much would Troy Falatano at right tackle change some of these individual plays and all like that? It has the offense in totality, knowing what it would be going into week one of the season, and knowing that you're probably going to see a lot of Fields under center, at least through the first 4 games, particularly, even possibly 5, has the offense overperformed, underperformed, or pretty much as expected when it comes to overall? I kind of thought it would be a little bit better than this.
Yeah, I would say underperformed. Thought the run game would be better, needs to be better. They said they would be an average organized offense. I do feel like they're an organized offense. They're not average. They're still, to me, below. They're probably better than what they've been in past years, but they're still 22nd in points per game, somewhere thereabouts. So I would say they've underachieved.
Are you as worried about the offensive line in its current shape and form as maybe most people are?
Yes and no. Again, there's some nuance to it. I certainly acknowledge all the injuries they've had, which they've not had the previous 2 years, is a big factor. No question, not only from the loss of talent, but just the lack of continuity and guys trying to get back to health and all the issues that come along with that. But to me, this line is still talented enough to do better than what it has overall. I know that hopefully will come with some time, and hopefully the health stays good, although who the heck knows? We're only 5 weeks into this thing, and they're so battle tested already. But the current group can be a successful, again, at least an average group, not going to be a top 5 group, but they can be an average group that can be better than what they've been. And that's kind of how I view things.
All right. So at its core, he wants to know, is this coaching failure or just bad personnel?
Again, it's all the above. It's hard to just blame just coaches, just players. Depends on the game, depends on the unit, depends on injuries, depends on a bunch of factors. It's always a combination of both.
All right, Todd Bender writes in about the argument for Russell Wilson. Regarding your question, why would it be better to start Russell Wilson over Fields? He says, we're not getting the rushing advantage from Fields anyway, he says. Fields' long on Sunday was 8 yards. It's possible that everyone knows it's coming, but if they don't respect the mid-range or deep shot, he says that won't change. Number 2, it will open up the middle of the field. He says, I trust Russell has enough arm talent left to get the ball to most areas of the field. Willingness to throw to targets in the middle will effectively double the area defenses will have to cover, he writes. Number 3, game management. Russell has always been smart about avoiding the hits and throwing the ball away. The best example of Fields' issue with that is the sack fumble he gave up against the Colts because he failed to throw the ball away. We were in field goal range at the time and we lost by 3. He says Wilson is better for games we should win. Fields should be an option for games where we need to take a chance.
Well, that may be true, but I don't know how that plays out in practice unless you're rotating quarterbacks based on your odds, which is obviously not going to happen. I don't think you're suggesting that. I think to address the point about Fields as a runner, yeah, as a runner, he's not been prolific, but it's still been important in some weighty type of situations on third down, short yardage type stuff that's really been impactful and beneficial. And I worry about losing that aspect and how that may impact an already struggling running back and running game at large. So I get that point about Fields not having eye-popping numbers, but I still think his run game ability has been useful to this team.
I agree. But once again, we can listen to arguments. That's several are giving here, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's not. I mean, to lay out the case for why Wilson should start. He's more veteran. His cadence may be more effective. He'll read the field quicker and better overall. Just may have some overall stronger command and make some of those plays that are there.
All right, we'll take one more. Cameron Andrews on outside linebacker. Hey, Dave and Alex, I have a question. Could you see us making a trade for an outside linebacker? Also, doesn't Elandon Roberts have some experience playing the position from his days in New England? If so, could he be another body we use to fill the void? Thanks for all you do. All right, first part of the question. No, I do not see them making a trade for an outside linebacker at this point. They'll just mix and match some of this personnel with Moon and Loudermilk and a couple of these practice squad guys until they can get back Highsmith, Herbig, both of them. Landon Roberts is just a downhill middle linebacker. He's not somebody you're going to put out there on the edge to rush the passer and defend the run that way.
Yeah, I don't think he was an edge guy in New England. I could be wrong. Someone can correct me, but he's an A gapper, gonna hit you up the middle on a linebacker blitz instead of more of a traditional rush. I should note as well, Tomlin was asked about, and it's a valid question, could Peyton Wilson be an option? Because we talked about a lot. He was an edge guy quite a bit at NC State, but Tomlin said he's not an option to play outside linebacker. Yeah, trade's probably not going to happen, although depending on how Herbig's going to miss, I mean, Highsmith hopefully will come back soon. Do you want an upgrade for a third guy, though, knowing how important it is to this team? I mean, so the outside backers are the engines of this defense. They make that unit go. I doubt it's going to happen, but I get the idea.
Who would that guy even be?
I have no idea. I hadn't looked at a list of names, but I imagine somebody would be out there if you really wanted to trade for somebody.
I'll just leave it. I'll be surprised if it happens. I think that's what it boils down to. I mean, could they? I mean, the answer to those type of questions: could they trade for X? Could they trade for position at X or player at X position? The answer is always plausible, I guess, but I think it's highly unlikely.
But let's say that Herbig is out at least a month, goes on IR, which I think is a good chance of happening, and Highsmith comes back even week 7, but maybe later than that. Even if Highsmith is back, do you like what you have behind that?
No.
Then make a trade.
Okay. Push the button.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, at least you explore the idea. I mean, I'm sure you. I
think you explore it, and I think you look at other teams' practice squads and things of that nature. But there's so many variables involved there. How long are these guys going to be out? And can you mix and match it enough? And can an outsider being brought in be a guy that ends up 60-70% of the snaps and makes a difference in short notice?
Yeah, I get all that. I think what will happen is, you get Highsmith back here hopefully by next week, by week 8, and you evaluate the group for the next couple of weeks. You got the trade deadline after the week 9 bye, that Tuesday after, so you have a bit of time here to evaluate Ogundeji and Leota and those guys, and evaluate from there and kind of see what you have before needing to make a decision. Again, I think a trade's unlikely, but in practice, you'll let things play out for a couple of weeks and see what the group looks like.
All right. We're about 2 hours here. So long show. Spent a lot of it, obviously, about George Pickens, and we'll get a lot of nasty comments, I'm sure, on the YouTube channel and the emails about that. But we we do what we think's appropriate and address the hot topics and as best and as objectively as we can. So, anything else you'd like to add before I get us out of here?
No, come back
on to the Raiders.
On to the Raiders, on to Las Vegas. So looking forward to the Friday show, and we'll talk to you guys then.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. A lot of great content. Alex got that Pickens breakdown video up on the site. Please stop by and see that. We'll obviously be loading up with content the rest of the day and on into the weekend, starting to preview the I almost call them the Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders here. Got a guest lined up, obviously a beat writer for the Friday show. So right in the middle of this thing this week, first injury report comes out later today for this week. We'll see if there's any transactions made ahead of it here 5 minutes after we get out the podcast. But we will indeed be back on Friday. And until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.